Chapter 1. Castaway. The rain hammered against the windshield as Maya pressed her foot harder against the accelerator, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. Each mile that passed between her and the Blackwood Pack territory felt like a small victory, but the hollow ache in her chest reminded her that freedom came at a price she was still paying. "You're a disgrace to this family," her father's voice echoed in her memory, as sharp now as it had been 3 hours ago. "Maybe the Silver Moon Pack will teach you some discipline. God knows we've failed." Maya had stood there in the pack house's grand foyer, surrounded by the family that had never truly accepted her. At 25, she was considered old for an unmated she-wolf, and her father, Alpha Marcus Blackwood, had finally lost patience with what he called her rebellious streak and unfortunate appearance. The truth was simpler and more cutting. She wasn't the perfect daughter he'd wanted. She was curvy where pack females were expected to be lean, independent where they should be submissive, and worst of all, she'd dared to question his alliance with a pack known for its cruelty. The Silver Moon Pack. Even thinking their name sent ice through her veins. Their alpha, Kieran Thorne, was legendary for his ruthlessness. Stories traveled between packs about wolves who entered his territory and never returned, about the way he ruled through fear and violence. Her father was sending her there as punishment, a political offering to cement an alliance she'd publicly opposed. "Consider it a lesson in obedience," he'd said, not even looking at her as he signed the treaty that essentially made her property. "Alpha Thorne has agreed to take you as his Luna. Perhaps marriage will finally make you useful." Thunder cracked overhead, and Maya flinched, her car swerving slightly on the narrow mountain road. She was still hours from Silver Moon territory, but already the landscape was changing. The familiar rolling hills of Blackwood land had given way to dense, dark forests that seemed to press against the road from both sides. Ancient pines towered overhead, their branches so thick they blocked out most of the storm-darkened sky. Her phone had lost signal 20 minutes ago. The last message she'd seen was from her younger sister Elena. "I'm sorry, Maya. I tried to change his mind. Please be careful." Elena was everything Maya wasn't. Petite, golden-haired, and perfectly compliant. She would make some alpha a beautiful Luna someday. Would bear strong pups and never question her mate's decisions. Maya touched her own dark hair, damp with nervous sweat, and wondered if Kieran Thorne would be disgusted by what her father was offering him. The car hit a pothole, jolting her from her thoughts. She was traveling too fast for these winding roads, but something inside her rebelled against arriving at her destination. Every mile she delayed was another few minutes of freedom, another few minutes where she belonged to no one but herself. Lightning illuminated the forest, and for a moment, Maya thought she saw something moving between the trees. Something large and dark, keeping pace with her car. She pressed the brakes slightly, peering into the darkness, but there was nothing there. Just her imagination, fueled by nerves and the stories she'd grown up hearing about these woods. The Silver Moon territory was vast, encompassing hundreds of square miles of wilderness. Most humans avoided the area entirely, warned away by rumors of wild animals and frequent disappearances. The few who lived nearby spoke in whispers about howls that echoed through the night and shadows that moved too intelligently to be natural. Maya had never been beyond her pack's borders alone. Blackwood females were protected, sheltered, kept safe within the packlands until they were mated off to approved males. The idea of living anywhere else, especially somewhere as dangerous as Silver Moon territory, terrified her more than she wanted to admit. Another flash of lightning, and this time she was certain she saw something. A massive shape, running parallel to the road about 50 yards into the trees. It was too large to be a normal wolf, too purposeful in its movement. Her heart began to race, and she pressed the accelerator again, eager to put distance between herself and whatever was out there. The rain was getting worse, turning the roads slick and treacherous. Maya rounded a sharp curve and suddenly found herself hydroplaning, the car sliding sideways toward the steep embankment that dropped away into darkness. She yanked the wheel hard to the left, overcorrecting, and the car spun completely around before slamming into a massive pine tree. The impact threw her forward against the seatbelt, and pain exploded through her chest and shoulder. Steam began rising from the crumpled hood, and she could hear the hiss of escaping coolant. The headlights flickered once, twice, then died, plunging her into complete darkness. Maya sat in stunned silence for a moment, her hands shaking as she tried to process what had happened. The engine was dead. Her phone had no signal. She was alone in hostile territory with no way to call for help, and somewhere in these woods, something large and predatory was moving through the night. She tried the ignition, but the car wouldn't respond. Rain drummed against the cracked windshield, and every few seconds lightning would illuminate the forest around her, revealing twisted branches and impenetrable shadows. The darkness felt alive, pressing against the windows like something trying to get in. Taking a shaky breath, Maya reached for her overnight bag in the back seat. She had a flashlight somewhere, and maybe enough supplies to wait until morning. Someone would come looking for her eventually. Her father might not love her, but he wouldn't let his political alliance collapse because his daughter died in a car accident. As she dug through her bag, a new sound cut through the storm. Low, resonant, and unmistakably wild. The howl of a wolf. But not just any wolf. This howl was deeper, more powerful than anything she'd ever heard. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing off the mountains and vibrating through the damaged car. Maya's blood turned to ice. She was in Silver Moon territory now, she realized. This wasn't just any forest. This was his forest. Alpha Kieran Thorne's domain. And something told her she was no longer alone. Chapter 2. The Shadow in the Storm. The howl faded into the night, leaving only the sound of rain and Maya's ragged breathing. She clutched the flashlight she'd finally found, though she hadn't dared turn it on yet. Something primal in her wolf instincts told her that drawing attention right now would be a mistake. Another howl answered the first, this one from a different direction. Then another. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized the truth. She wasn't dealing with a single wolf. There was a pack out there, and they knew she was here. She fumbled for her seatbelt, wincing as the movement sent fresh pain through her shoulder. The passenger door was her best bet. The driver's side was crumpled against the tree. But as she reached for the handle, a new sound froze her in place. Footsteps. Human footsteps, slow and deliberate on the wet asphalt. Through the rain-streaked window, Maya could make out a tall silhouette approaching her car. Lightning flashed, giving her a brief glimpse of broad shoulders and dark hair, but the figure's face remained hidden in shadow. He moved with a predator's grace, each step purposeful and controlled despite the storm raging around him. Maya's hand hovered over the door handle. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but where could she go? She was injured, in unfamiliar territory, surrounded by wilderness that could hide a dozen threats. And something about the approaching figure made her wolf side want to submit, to bare her throat in acknowledgement of a power far greater than her own. The footsteps stopped beside her car. A tap on the window made her jump, and a deep voice called out over the storm. "Are you hurt?" The question was simple, but the voice that spoke it sent shivers down Maya's spine. It was rich and commanding, with an undertone of barely controlled wildness. This wasn't just any pack member who'd happened upon her accident. The authority in those 3 words marked him as someone important, someone dangerous. Maya found her voice, though it came out smaller than she'd intended. I'm okay. Just shaken up." Your car's not going anywhere tonight. Lightning illuminated his face briefly. Strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, eyes that seemed to glow with their own inner light. You need to come with me. I don't even know who you are. Maya's hand moved instinctively to her phone, forgetting it had no signal. I can wait for help. A sound that might have been laughter rumbled in his chest. Help? You're 20 miles from the nearest human settlement, and the roads will be washed out by morning. There's no help coming. Maya's breath caught. 20 miles? She'd thought she was still hours from Silvermoon territory, but if this stranger was right, she'd already crossed into their lands without realizing it. Please, the voice continued, and something in its tone had shifted. The command was still there, but underneath it was something almost like concern. The storm's getting worse, and these woods aren't safe at night. Let me help you. Maya weighed her options. Stay in the car and hope to survive until morning, or trust a complete stranger in the middle of werewolf territory. Neither choice felt particularly appealing, but the temperature was already dropping, and she could feel the car's metal frame conducting the cold. If I come with you, she said carefully, where are you taking me? There's a cabin about a mile north. It's warm, dry, and stocked with supplies. Another pause, then more softly. I give you my word. You'll be safe there. Something in his voice made her want to believe him. Maybe it was desperation. Or maybe it was the strange pull she felt toward this shadowy figure. But Maya found herself reaching for the door handle. Okay, she whispered. The passenger door opened with a screech of twisted metal, and suddenly he was there, close enough that she could smell his scent. Pine and rain and something wild that made her wolf side whimper with recognition. Strong hands helped her from the car, steadying her when she stumbled on her injured leg. What's your name? He asked, his arm supporting her weight as they began walking into the forest. Maya. She hesitated, then added, Maya Blackwood. She felt him go still beside her. Blackwood, he repeated, and his voice had gone carefully neutral. You're a long way from home. Not by choice. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she immediately regretted revealing so much. They walked in silence for several minutes, following what seemed to be a well-worn path through the trees. Despite her injured leg, Maya found it surprisingly easy to match his pace. He adjusted his stride to accommodate her, his hand remaining steady at her elbow whenever the ground became uneven. The rain was lighter under the forest canopy, but the darkness was nearly absolute. Maya couldn't understand how her companion navigated so confidently without any visible light source. Several times she was certain they would walk straight into a tree, only to have him guide her smoothly around obstacles she never saw coming. How can you see anything in this? She finally asked. Practice. His answer was simple, but she caught the hint of amusement in it. These woods have been my home for a long time. Home. Maya felt a stab of loss at the word. She'd never have a home again, would she? She was property now, a political pawn to be handed over to Alpha Thorne like a tribute. The thought made her chest tighten with panic. Hey! The stranger's voice was gentler now, and his free hand touched her shoulder. You're safe. Whatever brought you out here, whatever you're running from, it can't touch you tonight. Maya looked up at him, wishing she could see his face clearly. There was something about this man that calmed her wolf. Something that made the constant anxiety she'd carried for weeks begin to ease. She didn't understand it, didn't trust it, but for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. How do you know I'm running from something? Because nobody drives these roads in a storm unless they're desperate. His grip on her arm tightened slightly, protective rather than constraining. And because you have the look of someone who's been hurt. The simple observation broke something loose in Maya's chest. Tears she'd been holding back for hours finally spilled over, mixing with the rain on her cheeks. She was hurt. By her father's rejection. By her pack's casual cruelty. By the knowledge that she'd never been enough for the people who were supposed to love her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, wiping at her eyes. "I don't usually—" "Don't apologize." His voice was firm. "You've been through something tonight. Anyone would be shaken up." Through the trees ahead, Maya could see a warm glow of light. The cabin he'd mentioned, she realized, and the sight of it filled her with unexpected relief. Shelter. Warmth. A place to rest and figure out what came next. As they approached the small log structure, Maya's mysterious rescuer finally spoke again. "Get some sleep tonight," he said quietly. "Tomorrow, we'll figure out how to get you home." Home. Maya almost laughed at the irony. She had no home to return to. But as he helped her up the cabin steps, his hand steady and warm on her back, she found herself wondering if maybe, just maybe, she'd found something better. Chapter 3. Sanctuary and Secrets. The cabin was nothing like what Maya had expected. From the outside, it appeared to be a simple log structure, but inside revealed a space that was both rustic and surprisingly comfortable. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, already crackling with warmth that chased away the night's chill. Handcrafted furniture filled the room, a leather sofa worn soft with age, a heavy wooden table, shelves lined with books that looked well-read rather than decorative. "Sit," her rescuer said, guiding her to the sofa. "Let me look at that leg." For the first time, Maya got a clear view of the man who'd found her in the storm. The firelight revealed features that were both beautiful and dangerous. Sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, a strong jaw covered with dark stubble, and eyes the color of storm clouds. But it was the way he moved that truly caught her attention. Every gesture was controlled, predatory, as if he was constantly aware of his own strength and the damage it could do. "I'm fine," Maya protested, even as she sank gratefully into the soft leather. "It's just a bruise." He knelt beside the sofa, his hands hovering near her injured leg without actually touching. "May I?" His voice was careful, respectful, and Maya found herself nodding. His fingers were gentle as they probed the swelling around her knee, but she could feel the barely leashed power in them. This was a man accustomed to violence, she realized, yet he touched her as if she were made of spun glass. "Nothing broken," he said finally, sitting back on his heels. "But you'll want to keep weight off it for a day or two." "Thank you." Maya studied his face in the firelight, noting the small scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead. "I still don't know your name." Something flickered in his storm-gray eyes, hesitation, maybe even fear. "Kieran," he said finally. Maya's blood turned to ice. "Kieran," she repeated slowly. "As in, Kieran Thorne?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You know the name. Everyone knows the name." Maya's heart was racing now, fight-or-flight instincts screaming at her to run despite her injured leg. She was in the den of the wolf she was meant to marry, the man her father had described as a monster. "You're the alpha of Silver Moon Pack." "I am." Kieran rose smoothly to his feet, putting distance between them. The warmth that had been in his voice earlier was gone, replaced by the cold authority she'd expected from the stories. "Which makes you my promised mate." Maya flinched at the clinical way he said it. "I suppose it does." "You don't sound happy about the arrangement." There was something almost like humor in his tone, though his expression remained unreadable. "Would you be?" The words came out sharper than she'd intended, months of anger and resentment boiling over. I'm being traded away like livestock because I had the audacity to question my father's alliances. Forgive me if I'm not thrilled about it." Kieran was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes studying her face. "What exactly did your father tell you about me?" Maya laughed bitterly. "That you're ruthless, that you rule through fear, that wolves who cross you tend to disappear." She met his gaze steadily, surprised by her own boldness. "He made it sound like marriage to you would be a fate worse than death. And yet, here you are." "Here I am," Maya agreed. "Though I have to say, you're not quite what I expected." "What did you expect?" Maya considered the question seriously. "A monster, honestly. Someone who would take what he wanted by force and never bother asking permission." She gestured around the cozy cabin. "Not someone who would rescue a stranger from a storm and tend to her injuries." Kieran moved to the fireplace, his back to her, as he added another log to the flames. "Perhaps your father's information is outdated." There was something in his voice that made Maya think there was more to the story, but before she could ask, her stomach chose that moment to growl loudly. She pressed a hand to her midsection, embarrassed. "When did you last eat?" Kieran asked, turning back to face her. Maya thought about it. She'd been too nervous to eat breakfast, and lunch had been forgotten in the chaos of packing and leaving. "Yesterday, I think." Without another word, Kieran disappeared into what she assumed was the kitchen. Maya heard the sounds of cabinets opening, dishes clattering, the hiss of something hitting a hot pan. The domestic normalcy of it was surreal. The feared alpha of Silvermoon Pack was cooking for her. She used the time alone to examine her surroundings more closely. The books on the shelves were an eclectic mix: classic literature, philosophy, texts on pack law and werewolf history. A chess set sat on a side table, the pieces carved from what looked like bone and obsidian. Everything in the cabin spoke of intelligence and careful thought, not the brutality she'd been led to expect. "You're surprised," Kieran observed when he returned with a plate of perfectly scrambled eggs and toast. "I am," Maya admitted, accepting the food gratefully. The first bite made her groan with pleasure. She hadn't realized how hungry she was. "This is delicious. Thank you." Kieran settled into the chair across from her, his own plate balanced on his knee. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling fire and the rain still pattering against the windows. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said finally. "Of course." "Why did you agree to this arrangement?" "You're an alpha. You could have any mate you wanted. Why accept a reluctant bride from a rival pack?" Kieran was quiet for so long that Maya wondered if he would answer at all. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "Your father and I have complicated history. This alliance serves both our interests." "That's not really an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's not." Maya set down her fork, studying his face. "The stories about you, how much of it is true?" "Some of it." Kieran met her gaze steadily. "I've done things I'm not proud of. Made enemies. Sometimes being feared is the only way to protect what matters." "And what matters to you?" "My pack, my territory, my people." He paused, then added more quietly, "Finding a way to break a curse that's haunted my bloodline for 3 generations." Maya's breath caught. A curse. That explained so much. The careful control, the reputation for violence, the isolation. What kind of curse? Kieran's expression closed off. "That's a story for another night." Maya wanted to press, but something in his tone warned her off. Instead, she finished her eggs and set the plate aside, suddenly exhausted by everything that had happened. "You should rest," Kieran said, reading her expression correctly. "The bedroom's through there. You'll find everything you need." "What about you?" I'll take the sofa. He was already reaching for her empty plate. Try to sleep. Tomorrow we'll discuss what comes next. As Maya limped toward the bedroom, she paused in the doorway. Kieran? Yes? Thank you for rescuing me tonight. For all of this. His smile was barely visible in the firelight, but it transformed his entire face. Get some rest, Maya Blackwood. You're safe here. As she closed the bedroom door behind her, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that everything she thought she knew about Kieran Thorne, and about her own future, was about to change. Chapter 4. Morning Revelations. Maya woke to the scent of coffee and something that smelled suspiciously like pancakes. Sunlight streamed through unfamiliar windows, and for a moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back. The storm, the accident, Kieran Thorne rescuing her from the wreckage of both her car and her life. She sat up carefully, testing her injured leg. The swelling had gone down considerably, and while it was still tender, the sharp pain had faded to a dull ache. Through the thin walls, she could hear movement in the kitchen, the soft clink of dishes being arranged. Maya had expected to sleep poorly in a strange place, especially knowing who was just beyond the door. Instead, she'd slept deeper than she had in months. Something about the cabin felt safe in a way her father's pack house never had, despite the fact that she was technically in enemy territory. After borrowing a toothbrush she found in the small attached bathroom, Maya emerged from the bedroom to find Kieran standing at the stove, his back to her. He'd changed clothes since last night. Instead of the dark shirt and jeans he'd worn in the storm, he now wore a simple gray Henley that clung to the broad muscles of his shoulders and back. His dark hair was still damp, as if he'd recently showered. "Good morning," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. Kieran turned, and Maya's breath caught. In the clear light of day, he was even more striking than he'd been by firelight, but it was his expression that surprised her. There was a gentleness there she hadn't expected, a warmth that completely contradicted his reputation. "How's the leg?" he asked, his eyes automatically going to where she favored her left side. "Much better, thank you." Maya moved to the small table where he'd set out plates and cutlery. "You didn't have to make breakfast." "I was already cooking." Kieran slid a stack of golden pancakes onto her plate, followed by crispy bacon that made her mouth water. "Besides, you need to keep your strength up." Maya accepted the food gratefully, but something in his tone made her look up at him more closely. "Keep my strength up for what?" Kieran settled across from her with his own plate, but Maya noticed he was eating mechanically, as if his mind was elsewhere. "I sent word to your father last night. Let him know you were safe." "Oh." Maya felt her appetite diminish slightly. She'd almost forgotten that this was temporary, that eventually she'd have to face the reality of why she was here. "What did he say?" "He's pleased that you made it to Silver Moon territory safely." Kieran's careful phrasing told Maya there was more to the conversation, but he didn't elaborate. "He expects the bonding ceremony to take place within the week." Maya's fork clattered against her plate. "A week?" Traditional werewolf law requires a 7-day courtship period before an arranged mating. Kieran's voice was neutral, professional, but Maya caught the slight tension around his eyes. "It's meant to allow the pair to determine compatibility." "And if we're not compatible?" Something flickered in Kieran's expression, too quick to identify. "Then the arrangement can be dissolved, and you'll be free to return to your pack." The words should have been reassuring, but something about the way he said them made Maya's chest tighten with unexpected anxiety. "You sound like you think that's what will happen." Kieran set down his coffee cup with more force than necessary. "Maya, you've been honest about why you're here. This isn't what you chose, it's what was chosen for you. I won't hold you to an arrangement you find repugnant." I never said I found you repugnant. The words slipped out before Maya could stop them, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. Kieran's eyes snapped to hers, something intense and unreadable burning in their gray depths. "Then what do you find me?" he asked quietly. Maya considered the question seriously. What did she think of the man who'd rescued her from the storm? Who'd tended her injuries and cooked her breakfast? Who spoke of curses and complicated history but treated her with more gentleness than her own family ever had? "Complicated," she said finally. "Nothing like what I expected." "Disappointed?" "The opposite." Maya met his gaze steadily. "Kieran, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Last night you mentioned a curse. Does it have anything to do with why people fear you?" Kieran was quiet for a long moment, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "My great-grandfather made a deal with a witch. He wanted power, dominance over the other packs in the region. She gave him what he asked for, but at a price." Kieran's jaw tightened. "Every alpha in our bloodline is cursed to lose control during the full moon. Complete, savage transformation with no memory of what we do while changed." Maya's breath caught. "That's why you live out here alone." "It's why I do a lot of things." Kieran's smile was bitter. "Including why I agreed to your father's proposal. The curse can only be broken by the love of a true mate. Not just any mate. It has to be someone who chooses to love the monster as well as the man." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Maya felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. The isolation, the fearsome reputation, the way he'd seemed almost resigned to her eventual rejection. "How long until the next full moon?" she asked quietly. 4 days. Maya's heart began to race. 4 days until she would see exactly what kind of monster lurked beneath Kieran's controlled exterior. 4 days to decide whether she could love someone capable of savage violence, regardless of whether he could control it. "Maya." Kieran's voice was gentle but firm. "I need you to understand what you'd be risking. During the change, I become something that would kill you without hesitation. I've built this cabin in the middle of nowhere because it's the only way to ensure I don't hurt innocent people." "Have you ever hurt anyone?" Maya asked. "During the changes, I mean." Kieran's silence was answer enough. "That's why your father chose you," Maya realized suddenly. "It wasn't just about the alliance, was it? He thinks you're expendable." The flash of pain in Kieran's eyes told her she'd hit too close to the truth. Maya felt a surge of anger at her father that surprised her with its intensity. "I'm not expendable," she said firmly. "And neither are you." Kieran looked at her with something that might have been hope. "You don't know what you're saying." "Don't I?" Maya pushed back from the table, standing despite the protest from her injured leg. "Kieran, I've spent my entire life being told I wasn't enough. Too stubborn, too independent, too much trouble to be worth the effort. Do you really think I'm afraid of a little darkness?" "This isn't a little darkness, Maya. This is a man who saved me from a storm and made me pancakes in the morning." Maya moved closer to him, drawn by an impulse she didn't fully understand. "This is someone who talks about protecting his pack and treats me like I'm worth something. Whatever else you might be, you're not a monster." Kieran stood as well, and suddenly they were close enough that Maya could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You don't know me," he said softly. "Then show me," Maya whispered. "We have 4 days. Show me who you really are." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Kieran reached out slowly, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. "Are you sure about this?" Maya leaned into his touch, surprising them both. "I've never been sure about anything in my life, but I'd like to try." Kieran's smile was small but genuine. "Then we'd better make the most of our time." Chapter 5. The Weight of Truth. After breakfast, Kieran insisted on checking Maya's abandoned car, though they both knew it was likely beyond repair. The walk through the forest gave Maya her first real look at Silver Moon territory in daylight, and she was struck by its wild beauty. Ancient trees stretched toward the sky, their trunks so massive that 3 people holding hands couldn't encircle them. Shafts of golden sunlight filtered through the canopy, illuminating patches of wildflowers that had somehow found purchase in the forest floor. "It's beautiful here," Maya said, pausing beside a stream that babbled cheerfully over smooth stones. "I can see why you love it." Kieran glanced back at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Most people find it too isolated, too wild." "I'm not most people." "No," he agreed quietly. "You're not." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, Maya noting how Kieran moved through the forest like he was part of it. Every step was placed with unconscious precision, every sound and scent catalogued automatically. This was a man completely at home in the wilderness, she realized. Whatever else the curse had taken from him, it had left him this, a connection to the wild that was beautiful to watch. When they reached her car, Maya winced at the sight. In daylight, the damage was even worse than she'd thought. The entire front end was crumpled, steam still rising faintly from the engine compartment. Her overnight bag was still in the back seat, somehow miraculously dry. "Total loss," Kieran said, confirming what she already knew. "But we can salvage your belongings." As Maya retrieved her bag, she found herself thinking about the life she'd left behind. Everything she owned, everyone she'd ever known, was back in Blackwood territory. The thought should have been devastating, but instead she felt oddly liberated. Whatever happened next, she was starting fresh. "Do you miss it?" Kieran asked, as if reading her thoughts. "Your old life?" Maya considered the question as they began the walk back to the cabin. "I miss my sister," she said finally. "And there are a few pack members who were kind to me. But the rest of it?" She shook her head. "No, I don't think I ever really belonged there anyway." "What would you have chosen if you'd had the freedom to choose?" It was such a simple question, but Maya realized no one had ever asked her before. Her entire life had been about duty, obligation, meeting other people's expectations. The idea of her own desires had never been part of the equation. "I wanted to be a teacher," she said, surprising herself by voicing the dream she'd buried years ago. "Work with children, maybe start a school for pack families. But my father said it was beneath our station." "It's not too late for that." Maya looked up at Kieran in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Silver Moon Pack has several families with young children. No formal education system, though. The parents do what they can, but most never learn to read themselves." Kieran's voice was careful, as if he was trying not to influence her decision. "If you decided to stay, if this arrangement worked out, you could start that school you wanted." The casual way he said it, "if you decided to stay," made Maya's heart skip. As if it really was her choice. As if her desires actually mattered. "You'd want that? An educated pack?" "I'd want whatever made you happy." The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. "Maya, if we do this, if we go through with the bonding, it won't be the traditional arrangement your father envisioned. I won't be your master, and you won't be my property. You'll be my partner, my equal. That means your dreams matter as much as mine." Maya stopped walking, staring at him. "You really mean that?" "I do." Kieran turned to face her fully. "I've seen what happens when matings are based on duty alone. My parents, let's just say love was never part of their equation. I won't repeat their mistakes." "What were they like?" Maya asked softly. Kieran's expression darkened. "My father was everything the stories say I am. Cruel, violent, ruled by the curse and his own anger. My mother was a political bride, like you, chosen for her bloodline rather than any personal connection. He paused, pain flickering in his gray eyes. She died when I was 16. Some say it was an accident, but I've always wondered if she simply couldn't bear another day of captivity. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Kieran, I'm so sorry. Don't be. It taught me what I didn't want to become. Kieran resumed walking, but his pace was slower now, more thoughtful. When I inherited the alpha position, I swore I'd be different. The curse makes that challenging, but I've tried to lead with intelligence rather than fear when possible. Is that why people are afraid of you? Because of what happens during the full moon? Partly. Kieran was quiet for a moment. But I haven't exactly discouraged the reputation. Fear keeps other packs from testing our borders, keeps my people safe. It's easier to be seen as a monster than to explain the truth. Maya understood that logic, even as her heart ached for him. The isolation it must require, the constant vigilance, the knowledge that one night a month he became something capable of destroying everything he cared about. How do you bear it? She asked quietly. The same way you've borne being unwanted by your own family, Kieran replied. One day at a time, and with the hope that someday things might be different. The comparison hit closer to home than Maya wanted to admit. They were both prisoners of circumstances beyond their control, both shaped by other people's cruelty and expectations. When they reached the cabin, Kieran busied himself with practical matters, checking supplies, testing the radio for weather updates, maintaining the careful routines that kept his isolated world functioning. Maya found herself watching him work, noting the way his hands moved with unconscious skill, the concentration that settled over his features. "Can I help?" she asked finally. Kieran looked up from the firewood he was stacking. "You don't have to?" "I want to." Maya moved closer, accepting the logs he handed her. "If I'm going to be here for the next few days, I might as well be useful." Working together felt natural in a way that surprised them both. Maya had never been allowed to do manual labor at her father's pack house. It was considered beneath her station. But there was something satisfying about the physical work, about contributing to their shared survival. "Maya," Kieran said when they'd finished, "there's something else you need to know about the curse." Maya straightened, sensing the gravity in his tone. "What is it?" "The transformation. It's not just violent. It's also painful. Extraordinarily so." Kieran's hands clenched at his sides. "I'll need you to leave the cabin tomorrow night, before the moon rises. There's a safe house about 5 miles south. I'll show you the way. You can return the morning after." "You want me to leave you alone, during the worst of it?" "I want you alive," Kieran said firmly. "Maya, what I become, it would see you as prey, nothing more. I won't risk your safety, not even to break the curse." Maya studied his face, seeing the pain and resignation there. "Has anyone ever tried to stay? To be there with you during the change?" Kieran's laugh was bitter. "Who would be that foolish?" "Someone who's falling in love with you," Maya thought, but didn't say it aloud. Instead, she reached out and took his hand, feeling him tense at the contact. "We still have 3 days," she said softly. "Let's see what happens." Kieran looked down at their joined hands, something vulnerable flickering in his expression. "You're not what I expected either, Maya Blackwood." "Good," Maya replied, squeezing his fingers gently. "I'd hate to be predictable." As evening settled over the forest, Maya found herself wondering if 3 days would be enough time to fall completely in love with a man who was convinced he was a monster. Something told her it might be too much time. Chapter 6. Hearts in the Wilderness. The second day dawned crisp and clear, with a bite in the air that promised autumn was approaching. Maya woke to find Kieran already gone from the cabin, though he'd left fresh coffee warming on the stove and a note explaining he'd gone to check the territory's borders. A daily ritual, she was learning, that helped him monitor for threats to his pack. She used the solitude to explore the cabin more thoroughly, discovering details that painted a clearer picture of the man who lived here. The books on his shelves revealed an intellect that hungered for knowledge. Philosophy texts sat beside agricultural manuals, classical literature mixed with modern pack management theory. In one corner, she found a half-finished wood carving, the partially formed shape of a wolf emerging from a block of pine. When Kieran returned an hour later, he found Maya sitting by the window with one of his books, a collection of poetry by Rainer Maria Rilke. "Interesting choice," he observed, settling into the chair across from her. "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act. Once with beauty," Maya read aloud. "Do you believe that?" Kieran was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes studying her face. "I'd like to," he said finally, "though some dragons bite back." Maya closed the book, keeping her finger between the pages. "Tell me about your pack, the people you protect." "Why?" "Because they're part of who you are. And if I'm going to understand you, I need to understand what matters to you." Kieran leaned back in his chair, something shifting in his expression. "There are 43 of us, not counting myself. Families mostly, couples with children, a few elderly members who've been with Silvermoon for decades. They live in a settlement about 10 miles east of here. And they accept your condition? They know about the curse, if that's what you're asking. Most of their families have served mine for generations. They understand the price of my protection." Kieran's voice carried a weight Maya was beginning to recognize, the burden of leadership combined with the isolation of his affliction. "Do you ever see them? Outside of pack business?" "Sometimes." Kieran stood, moving to the window as if the conversation made him restless. "Sarah Martinez brings her daughter Lucy here once a month. Lucy's 8, and she's convinced she can cure me with cookies and terrible jokes." Maya heard the affection in his voice, the gentleness that crept in when he mentioned the child. "She sounds sweet." "She is. And completely fearless. Last month she asked me why I lived alone, and when I tried to explain about the curse, she said it didn't matter because everyone needs friends." Kieran's smile was soft, almost sad. Children see things differently. Maybe they see things more clearly. Kieran turned back to her, something intense in his gaze. "Is that what you're doing, Maya? Seeing me clearly?" Maya set the book aside and stood, moving closer to him. Over the past day and a half, she'd noticed that Kieran had a tendency to put physical distance between them whenever the conversation became too personal, as if proximity made him vulnerable in ways he couldn't afford. "I'm trying to," she said honestly. "But you keep pulling away whenever I get too close. Because getting close is dangerous." Kieran's voice was rough, and Maya could see the conflict in his expression, want warring with caution. "Maya, in less than 48 hours, I'm going to become something that would tear you apart without hesitation. How can I ask you to care about me knowing that?" Maya reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, she placed her palm flat against his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath her fingers. "You're not asking me to do anything," she said softly. "I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to care about you, monster and all." "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." Maya's hand moved up to cup his cheek, feeling the slight roughness of his stubble against her palm. "Kieran, I've spent my entire life being told I was wrong for feeling too much, for caring too deeply about things that didn't matter to other people. Do you really think I'm going to stop now because it's inconvenient?" Kieran's eyes closed, and he leaned into her touch despite himself. "You should run," he whispered. "You should get as far away from here as possible." "I'm not running." Maya's thumb traced the scar through his eyebrow, wondering what had caused it. "I'm tired of running." When Kieran opened his eyes, the look in them made Maya's breath catch. Raw hunger mixed with desperate hope, as if he was seeing something he'd wanted his entire life but never dared reach for. "Maya," he said, her name like a prayer on his lips. "Yes?" Instead of answering, Kieran covered her hand with his own, pressing it more firmly against his cheek. The gesture was achingly tender, full of a longing that made Maya's heart clench. "I haven't had anyone touch me without fear in over 10 years, he admitted quietly. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. 10 years of isolation, of being seen as a monster by everyone around him. The loneliness of it was staggering. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered. "You should be." "But I'm not." Maya moved closer until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Kieran, what would happen if you let yourself believe that maybe, just maybe, someone could love all of you? Even the parts that scare you?" Kieran's free hand came up to frame her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've never let myself imagine that possibility." "Then imagine it now." Maya's voice was barely audible. "Imagine what it would feel like to not be alone anymore." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Kieran leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she didn't, when she instead rose on her toes to meet him halfway, he kissed her with a reverence that stole her breath. It was soft, tentative, as if he was afraid she might disappear if he held on too tightly. Maya could taste his uncertainty, his desperate hope, and she kissed him back with all the tenderness she had to give. When they broke apart, Kieran rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. "Maya," he said, and her name sounded different now, less like a question, more like a revelation. "I know," she whispered, understanding what he couldn't say. She could feel it too, this thing growing between them that was deeper than attraction, stronger than simple affection. It was the kind of connection that changed everything, that made the impossible seem suddenly within reach. "The full moon is tomorrow night," Kieran reminded her, though his hands remained gentle on her face. "I know that too." "And you're still not running?" Maya smiled, seeing her own wonder reflected in his storm-gray eyes. "I told you, Kieran. I'm tired of running. Maybe it's time to fight for something instead. Even if it's dangerous?" "Especially if it's dangerous." Maya leaned into him, feeling his arms come around her waist. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen?" Kieran's laugh was shaky but genuine. "Don't tempt fate." Maya Blackwood. "Too late," she replied, pressing a soft kiss to the corner of his mouth. "I think I already have." As afternoon melted into evening, Maya found herself thinking that tomorrow's full moon felt both too close and not nearly close enough. Whatever happened next, whatever monster Kieran became in the darkness, she was no longer willing to face it from a safe distance. Some things, she was learning, were worth the risk. Chapter 7. The Calm Before the Storm. The third day arrived with an ominous stillness that seemed to press against the windows of the cabin. Maya woke to find Kieran already dressed and moving with a restless energy that set her nerves on edge. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, suggesting he'd slept little, if at all. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly, watching him pace the length of the small living room like a caged wolf. "Restless, anxious." Kieran's hands flexed at his sides, and Maya noticed the way his muscles seemed to coil with barely contained tension. "It always starts the day before. The wolf begins to surface, wanting out. Maya rose from the bed, pulling on the sweater she'd borrowed from his closet. It was far too large for her, but it smelled like him. Pine and rain and that wild scent that made her wolf side whimper with recognition. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Kieran stopped pacing, his gray eyes finding hers. "Just stay close. Talk to me. Help me remember who I am while I still can." The vulnerability in his voice broke something open in Maya's chest. She crossed to him without hesitation, taking his restless hands in her steady ones. "Tell me about the first time," she said gently. "When did you know about the curse?" Kieran's jaw tightened, but he didn't pull away from her touch. "I was 16. My father had just died. Heart attack brought on by the strain of fighting the transformation one too many times. I thought maybe the curse would die with him, that I'd be free." His laugh was bitter. 3 days later, I woke up in the forest covered in blood, with no memory of how I'd gotten there. Maya's grip on his hands tightened. "Were you alone?" "My mother tried to help at first. She locked me in the basement, thinking she could contain it. But the curse doesn't work that way. It makes you stronger, more savage. I broke through solid steel like it was paper." Kieran's voice dropped to a whisper. "I could have killed her. Would have. If she hadn't run fast enough. But she didn't abandon you." "No. She found other ways to help. Researched the curse. Tried to find a cure. She spent years tracking down the witch who'd cursed my great-grandfather. But by the time she found her..." Kieran shook his head. "The witch was long dead, and her secrets died with her." Maya lifted one of his hands to her lips, pressing a soft kiss to his knuckles. "Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was, and she would have liked you." Kieran's smile was sad but genuine. "She always said the curse could only be broken by someone brave enough to love a monster." "I used to think she was being naive, but now..." "Now?" "Now I'm starting to think she might have been right." Kieran's free hand came up to cup Maya's cheek. "You're not running, even knowing what's coming tonight. That takes a kind of courage I've never encountered before." Maya leaned into his touch, her heart racing at the hope she heard in his voice. "Maybe I'm just too stubborn to know when to quit." "Maybe." Kieran's thumb traced her lower lip, the gesture achingly tender. "Maya, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "No matter what happens tonight, no matter what you hear from the direction of the cabin, you won't come back until morning. Promise me." Maya hesitated, every instinct rebelling against the idea of leaving him to face the transformation alone. "Kieran, promise me." His voice was firm now, carrying the authority of an alpha. "I won't be able to live with myself if something happens to you because of my curse." "I promise," Maya said finally, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. Kieran searched her face as if memorizing every detail. "Thank you." They spent the morning together in quiet companionship, Kieran showing Maya the defensive measures he'd built around the cabin. Reinforced doors, steel shutters for the windows, heavy chains and locks that could contain even supernatural strength. It was sobering to see the elaborate prison he'd constructed for himself, the careful preparations that had become routine over the years. "You've been doing this alone for so long," Maya observed, running her fingers over the deep gouges in the reinforced door, claw marks from previous transformations. It was safer that way. Kieran was checking the chains for the third time, his movements sharp and precise. The fewer people who knew, the fewer people who could get hurt. But at what cost? Maya turned to face him fully. "Kieran, you've been living like a prisoner in your own home. When was the last time you felt truly free?" Kieran paused in his preparations, something vulnerable flickering in his expression. 2 days ago, he said quietly. "When I pulled you from that car and you looked at me without fear. That was the first time in years I felt like something other than a monster." Maya's breath caught. "You're not a monster. You're a man dealing with an impossible situation with more grace and strength than anyone has a right to expect." "Maya, I mean it." She moved closer, placing her hands on his chest. "Whatever happens tonight, whatever you become in the darkness, it doesn't change who you are in the light. It doesn't change how I feel about you." Kieran's hands covered hers, his grip almost desperate. "How can you be so certain?" "Because I've seen your heart," Maya said simply. "I've seen the way you care for your pack, the way you've protected everyone around you even at the cost of your own happiness. That's not something that disappears with the moon." As afternoon wore on, Kieran's restlessness increased. He couldn't sit still for more than a few minutes at a time, his hands constantly moving, his eyes darting to the windows as if tracking the sun's progress across the sky. Maya could see the wolf beginning to surface in the predatory grace of his movements, the way his nostrils flared as if scenting something she couldn't detect. "It's time," he said suddenly, though the sun was still an hour from setting. "You need to go to the safe house now." Maya's stomach clenched with dread, but she nodded. Kieran had already shown her the path through the forest, had stocked the small shelter with everything she'd need for the night. There was no point in delaying the inevitable. "Will you walk me there?" she asked. "Of course." The journey through the darkening forest was silent, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Maya found herself memorizing every detail. The way Kieran moved like a shadow between the trees, the careful distance he maintained as his control began to fray, the haunted look in his eyes as they approached their destination. The safe house was little more than a reinforced bunker, but it was well stocked and secure. Kieran checked the locks twice, his movements increasingly agitated. "Maya." He turned to face her, and she could see the battle raging in his storm-gray eyes. Man fighting wolf, love warring with instinct. "I need you to know, whatever happens tonight, these past 3 days have been the best of my life." Maya's vision blurred with unshed tears. "Mine too." "And Maya?" Kieran's voice was rough, strained. "I love you. I know it's too soon. I know it's crazy. But I needed you to know." "I love you too," Maya whispered, the words feeling like both a gift and a goodbye. Kieran kissed her then, desperate and fierce, as if he could pour all his love and fear and hope into the contact. When they broke apart, his eyes were no longer entirely human. "Stay safe," he commanded, already backing away from her. "Come back to me," Maya called after him. But Kieran was already disappearing into the gathering darkness, and Maya was left alone with the night and the terrible certainty that the man she loved was about to become something that might not remember her name. Chapter 8. Blood Moon Rising. Maya sat in the cramped safe house, watching the last rays of sunlight fade through the narrow window. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant call of night birds and the whisper of wind through the trees. She'd tried to read one of the books Kieran had left for her, but the words swam meaninglessly across the page. Her mind was consumed with thoughts of what was happening 5 miles away. The full moon wouldn't rise for another hour, but already she could feel something changing in the forest around her. The normal sounds of evening wildlife had gone quiet, as if every creature sensed the approaching danger. Even her own wolf, usually restless and curious, had retreated deep inside her consciousness, instinctively seeking shelter from whatever was coming. Maya checked her watch for the 20th time. 8:15. Kieran had told her the transformation typically began just after moonrise, around 9:30. She tried to imagine what he was going through right now. Was he already secured in the reinforced room? Was he fighting the change? Or had he learned to accept the inevitable? A distant howl echoed through the night, and Maya's blood turned to ice. It was too early. The moon wasn't even visible yet. But the sound that drifted through the darkness was unmistakably the cry of a wolf in agony, raw and primal, and filled with such pain that it made her chest ache in sympathy. Kieran. Maya pressed her hands against her ears, but she couldn't block out the sound. Another howl followed the first, then another, each one seeming to tear something vital from her soul. She'd known the transformation was painful, but hearing it was worse than anything she'd imagined. The safe house suddenly felt like a cage. Every instinct screamed at her to go to him, to offer whatever comfort she could, but she'd made a promise. Kieran had been adamant. She had to stay away, no matter what she heard. But as another agonized howl split the night, Maya found her resolve wavering. How could she sit here in safety while the man she loved suffered alone? Because he asked you to, she reminded herself firmly. Because your being there would only make it worse. The howling continued for what felt like hours, though her watch told her only 30 minutes had passed. Sometimes the sounds were recognizably human, gasps and cries that spoke of unimaginable pain. Other times they were purely animal, wild and savage in a way that made her wolf cower in submission. By 9 o'clock, an eerie silence had fallen over the forest. Maya strained her ears, but could hear nothing from the direction of the cabin. The quiet was somehow worse than the howling had been. At least the cries had told her Kieran was still fighting, still human enough to feel pain. Now there was nothing but the oppressive weight of waiting. Maya tried to sleep, knowing she'd need her strength for whatever tomorrow might bring. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kieran's face as he'd walked away from her. The love and desperation and terrible resignation in his storm-gray eyes. She'd told him she wasn't afraid, but sitting alone in the darkness, she was beginning to understand the true scope of what the curse had stolen from him. Not just his freedom or his peace of mind, but his ability to trust in love. How could you believe someone could care for you when one night, a month, you became something that would destroy them without hesitation? How could you build a life with another person when you had to lock yourself away like a rabid animal on a regular basis? Around midnight, new sounds began to filter through the forest. Not howls this time, but something worse. The crash of splintering wood, the screech of metal being torn apart. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized what she was hearing. The reinforced room wasn't holding. Whatever Kieran had become, it was stronger than the preparations that had contained it before. Maya found herself on her feet before she'd consciously decided to move, her hand on the door handle of the safe house. Every rational part of her mind screamed warnings, but her heart was louder. Kieran was in trouble. The careful precautions he'd spent years perfecting were failing, and he was loose in the forest with no memory of who he was or what he might encounter. You promised, her rational mind insisted. You promised to stay here. But she'd also told him she loved him, all of him, even the parts that scared her. How could she honor one promise while breaking the other? Maya's hand tightened on the door handle, her whole body trembling with indecision. Then a new sound reached her ears. Human voices, shouting in the distance. Fear spiked through her as she recognized what she was hearing. Pack members. Kieran's people had heard the commotion and were investigating. They would try to help him, she realized with growing horror. They would approach the transformed Alpha with the best of intentions, not understanding that the creature wearing his face would see them as nothing but prey. Maya's hesitation evaporated. Promise or no promise, she couldn't let innocent people walk into a slaughter. Not when there might be something she could do to prevent it. She grabbed the emergency flare Kieran had left in the safe house, something to signal for help if she found herself in danger, and slipped out into the night. The forest was alive with menace, every shadow potentially hiding death. But Maya forced herself to move toward the sounds of destruction, following the path Kieran had shown her earlier. The closer she got to the cabin, the more evidence she found of the creature's rampage. Trees scored with claw marks, boulders shifted from their resting places, patches of earth torn up as if something massive had been thrashing in fury. The scent of blood hung heavy in the air, though whether it was Kieran's or something else's, she couldn't tell. Maya crested a small hill and froze. Below her, the cabin was partially destroyed. The reinforced room had been torn apart from the inside, steel beams twisted like ribbons. And standing in the wreckage, illuminated by the cold light of the full moon, was something that had once been Kieran. The creature was massive, easily twice the size of a normal wolf. Its fur was black as midnight, its eyes burning with an intelligence that was completely alien. When it turned in her direction, Maya felt her knees nearly buckle. This wasn't the man who had kissed her goodbye. This was pure predator, wild and merciless and beautiful in its terrible power. The voices were getting closer. Maya could see flashlight beams moving through the trees, pack members drawn by concern for their alpha. They had no idea what they were walking into. Maya raised the emergency flare, her hands shaking as she pulled the cord. Red light exploded across the clearing, and the creature's head snapped toward her. For one terrifying moment, their eyes met across the distance. Then the beast that had been Kieran let out a roar that shook the earth and began to run, straight toward her. Chapter 9. The Heart of the Beast. Maya's first instinct was to run, every survival instinct screaming at her to flee from the massive predator bearing down on her. But her feet remained rooted to the spot, not from fear, but from something deeper, a bone-deep certainty that running would only trigger the creature's hunting instincts. Instead, she stood perfectly still, the dying flare casting eerie red shadows across the clearing as the beast approached. The creature, Kieran, she reminded herself desperately, slowed as it drew near, its massive head tilting in what seemed like confusion. Maya could see the intelligence burning in those alien eyes, but it was wild and unfocused, like looking at a mind fractured by pain and transformation. "Kieran," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of her own racing heartbeat. The beast's ears twitched at the sound, and for a moment something almost human flickered in its gaze. But then the moment passed, and the creature began to circle her with predatory grace, its lips pulling back to reveal fangs that could tear her throat out in a single bite. Maya forced herself to breathe slowly, remembering everything Kieran had told her about wolves and pack dynamics. Direct eye contact would be seen as a challenge. Sudden movements would trigger an attack. Her only chance was to make herself as non-threatening as possible, and hope that somewhere inside this monster, the man she loved still existed. The pack members' voices were getting closer, their flashlight beams cutting through the darkness as they approached the destroyed cabin. Maya could hear Sarah Martinez calling Kieran's name, her voice tight with worry. If they found him like this... "Please," Maya whispered, slowly sinking to her knees in the damp earth. The submissive posture felt wrong to her independent nature. But she pushed her pride aside. "Please remember me." The beast stopped circling, its massive head lowering until it was only inches from her face. Maya could feel its breath on her skin, hot and wild, carrying the scent of blood and forest, and something indefinably Kieran underneath it all. This close, she could see the scars on its muzzle, old wounds from previous transformations, proof of the violence this curse had wrought on the man she loved. "It's Maya," she said softly, fighting the urge to reach out and touch him. "I know you're in there somewhere. I know you can hear me." The creature's eyes narrowed, and Maya held her breath as it seemed to study her face. Then, slowly, It began to lower its massive head until its forehead nearly touched hers. The gesture was achingly familiar. It was exactly how Kieran had held her that first morning in the cabin, when he'd kissed her with such desperate tenderness. "That's it," Maya breathed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You do remember." The beast made a sound then, low and rumbling in its chest. Not quite a growl, but not entirely animal either. It sounded almost like pain, like a creature trapped in its own skin, fighting to break free. Maya slowly raised one hand, giving the beast time to pull away if it chose to. When it remained still, she gently placed her palm against its massive cheek, feeling the coarse fur and the powerful muscles beneath. "I'm here," she whispered. "You're not alone." The creature's eyes closed at her touch, and Maya felt something shift in the air around them. The wild energy that had been radiating from the beast seemed to settle slightly, as if her presence was anchoring it to something beyond its primal instincts. "Alpha!" Sarah's voice called from dangerously close by. "Alpha, where are you?" The beast's head snapped up at the sound, its lips pulling back in a snarl. Maya felt her heart stop as she saw the predatory focus return to its eyes. Without thinking, she threw her arms around the creature's massive neck, pressing her face against its fur. "No," she said firmly. "They're your pack. They're yours to protect, not hunt." The beast went rigid in her embrace, every muscle coiled with tension. For a terrifying moment, Maya thought she'd miscalculated, that her touch would trigger the very violence she was trying to prevent. Then slowly, she felt some of the tension leave its frame. "Stay with me," Maya whispered against its fur. "Don't let the curse win. Fight for who you really are." The flashlight beams were getting brighter, the voices more distinct. Maya could hear at least 3 pack members now, all of them calling for their alpha with increasing urgency. They would round the hill any moment and find her embracing a monster in the ruins of Kieran's sanctuary. "Please," Maya said desperately. "Help me protect them. Help me keep them safe." The beast pulled back to look at her, and Maya gasped at what she saw in its eyes. The alien intelligence was still there, but underneath it, fighting its way to the surface, was something achingly familiar. Kieran's soul, battered but unbroken, struggling against the chains of his curse. Maya reached up slowly and cupped the beast's massive face in both hands. "I love you," she said clearly. "I love all of you, the man and the wolf, the darkness and the light. You are not a monster, Kieran Thorne. You are mine, and I am yours, and nothing, not even this curse, can change that." The beast's eyes widened, and Maya saw the moment when recognition truly dawned. Not just awareness of who she was, but understanding of what she was offering. Complete acceptance. Unconditional love. The very thing the curse had convinced him was impossible. A sound escaped the creature then. Half growl, half sob, entirely heartbroken. It pressed its forehead against Maya's, and she felt the tremor that ran through its massive frame. "Alpha!" The voices were right on top of them now. Maya could see the flashlight beams cresting the hill, illuminating the destruction below. "Go," Maya whispered urgently. "Run deep into the forest. Don't let them see you like this. But know that when morning comes, when you're yourself again, I'll be here waiting." The beast hesitated, as if unwilling to leave her alone with the approaching pack members. "I'll be safe," Maya promised. "They won't hurt me. And you won't hurt them. Because you're stronger than the curse wants you to believe." The creature looked at her for one more long moment, its eyes burning with an emotion too complex for its wolf form to express. Then it turned and melted into the forest shadows, moving with a silence that seemed impossible for something so large. Maya remained on her knees in the clearing as the first pack member, Sarah Martinez, as she'd expected, appeared at the crest of the hill. The woman's flashlight beams swept across the destroyed cabin before settling on Maya's small figure in the center of the devastation. "Maya?" Sarah called, her voice tight with confusion and fear. "What are you doing here? Where's the Alpha?" Maya slowly got to her feet, brushing dirt and leaves from her clothes. In the distance, she could hear the sound of the beast moving through the forest. Not hunting, not destroying, but simply running. Running away from the people it loved to keep them safe. "He's indisposed," Maya said carefully. "But he's all right. We're all going to be all right." As more pack members emerged from the tree line, their faces full of questions Maya couldn't answer, she found herself thinking about the look in the beast's eyes when she'd told it she loved it. The recognition, the desperate hope. The way it had chosen to trust her, even when every instinct told it to hunt. The curse might still have hold of Kieran's body, but Maya was beginning to believe that love was stronger than any magic. And tomorrow, when the sun rose and the man she loved returned to himself, she would be there to catch him when he fell. Some promises, she was learning, were worth everything to keep. Chapter 10. Dawn's Redemption. The long hours until dawn passed in a blur of explanations and worried waiting. Maya found herself at the center of a concerned pack, all of them demanding to know where their Alpha was and what had happened to the cabin. She deflected their questions as best she could, claiming Kieran had sent her to keep watch while he dealt with a territorial matter that required his full attention. Sarah Martinez was the hardest to convince. The woman's dark eyes were sharp with intelligence, and Maya could see her cataloging the destruction around them, the twisted steel, the claw marks that were far too large to belong to any normal wolf, the lingering scent of wild magic that made the pack members' wolves restless and uneasy. "This wasn't a territorial dispute," Sarah said quietly, drawing Maya aside while the other pack members began clearing debris. "I've seen the aftermath of the Alpha's difficult nights before. This is worse than usual." Maya felt her heart skip. "You know about the curse?" "We all do." Sarah's expression was grim but not unsympathetic. "We've been Kieran's pack for 3 years now. You learn to read the signs, to prepare for the nights when he needs space." She gestured at the destroyed reinforced room. "But this looks like his containment measures failed completely." "He's all right," Maya said quickly. "I saw him earlier. He just needs time to recover." Sarah studied Maya's face for a long moment. "You care about him." It wasn't a question, but Maya answered anyway. "Yes, more than I thought possible." "Good." Sarah's smile was small but genuine. "He's been alone too long. We've all hoped that someday he'd find someone brave enough to see past the curse to the man underneath." As the sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, Maya excused herself from the cleanup efforts and made her way back into the forest. The pack members had offered to escort her to the main settlement, where she could rest in comfort while they waited for their Alpha's return. But Maya had politely declined. She knew where Kieran would go when the transformation ended, and she intended to be there when he needed her. The stream where they'd walked together on their first full day babbled cheerfully in the morning light, its banks carpeted with fallen leaves that crunched softly under Maya's feet. She found a fallen log beside the water and settled down to wait, her ears straining for any sound that might herald Kieran's return. She didn't have to wait long. A crashing in the underbrush announced his approach, followed by a string of curses that would have made a sailor blush. Maya's heart leaped at the sound of his voice, human again, familiar again, wonderfully and completely Kieran. He stumbled into the clearing a moment later, naked and covered in scratches, his dark hair wild in leaves clinging to his skin. When he saw Maya sitting by the stream, he froze. "Maya." Her name came out as a broken whisper. "What are you doing here? You were supposed to stay at the safe house." Maya rose slowly, drinking in the sight of him. He was himself again. Storm gray eyes, clear and focused. The alien intelligence of the beast replaced by the gentle humanity she'd fallen in love with. But she could see the shame in his expression, the self-recrimination that was already beginning to build. "I heard the cabin being destroyed," she said simply. "Your pack came to investigate. I couldn't let them walk into danger." Kieran's face went white. "The pack? Did the beast hurt anyone?" "No." Maya took a step toward him, then another. "No one was hurt. You made sure of that. You don't know what you're talking about." Kieran backed away from her, his hands shaking. "I don't remember anything after the transformation began. For all I know, I could have... But you didn't." Maya continued her slow approach, her voice calm and certain. "Kieran, you saw me last night. The beast saw me. And instead of attacking, instead of hunting, you chose to protect. You ran away to keep everyone safe." Kieran stared at her in shock. "That's impossible. The curse doesn't work that way. I become something mindless, savage. You became something that remembered love." Maya was close enough to touch him now, close enough to see the tears gathering in his eyes. "The beast knew me, Kieran. When I said your name, when I told you I loved you, something responded. Something fought its way through the curse and chose to spare me. Maya, you can't know that for certain. The transformation..." Maya silenced him by reaching up and cupping his face in her hands. The same gesture she'd used with the beast. "I held you," she said softly. "Just like this. And you let me." The most dangerous predator in these mountains let a defenseless human hold him and tell him she loved him. That wasn't chance, Kieran. That was you. Kieran's composure finally cracked. A sob escaped him, then another. And suddenly he was clinging to Maya as if she were the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. She felt the tremors running through his body, the release of years of shame and self-hatred finally finding an outlet. "I was so afraid," he whispered against her hair. "So afraid I'd hurt you. That the curse would take away the only good thing that's ever happened to me. I'm right here." Maya's arms tightened around him, one hand stroking his back in soothing circles. "I'm not going anywhere." They stood together by the stream as the sun climbed higher, Kieran gradually calming in Maya's embrace. When he finally pulled back to look at her, his eyes were red but clear. "I need to check on my pack," he said quietly. "Make sure everyone's really all right." "They're fine. Sarah's organizing the cleanup at the cabin." Maya brushed a stray leaf from his hair. "She knows about the curse, by the way." "They all do." Kieran's eyebrows rose. "Sarah told you that?" "She said they've been hoping you'd find someone brave enough to see past the curse." Maya smiled. "Apparently, I passed the test." "You more than passed." Kieran's hands framed her face, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "Maya, what you did last night, no one has ever shown that kind of faith in me before. That kind of love." "Get used to it," Maya said firmly. "Because I'm not planning to stop." Kieran's laugh was shaky but genuine. "Does this mean you're staying? That you'll go through with the bonding ceremony?" Maya pretended to consider the question, enjoying the flicker of anxiety that crossed his features. "Well, I suppose I could learn to tolerate you, even if you do turn into a giant wolf once a month." "Maya." Kieran's voice was serious now, weighted with emotion. "Are you sure? Really sure? Because once we're bonded, there's no going back. You'll be tied to me, to the curse, to whatever comes next." Maya thought about her old life, the pack that had never truly accepted her, the father who'd traded her away like property, the constant feeling of not belonging anywhere. Then she looked at the man before her, scarred and complicated, and more beautiful than anything she'd ever seen. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," she said. "Kieran Thorne, I choose you. All of you. Forever." Kieran's smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. "Then let's go home," he said, taking her hand in his. "We have a bonding ceremony to plan." As they walked back through the forest together, Maya found herself thinking about curses and blessings, about the strange ways love could transform even the darkest magic. The beast might return with the next full moon, but she would be ready for it. After all, some monsters were worth loving. Chapter 11. The Luna's Promise. 3 months later, Maya stood at the edge of the pack settlement, watching children play in the afternoon sunlight while their mothers worked nearby. The sight filled her with a contentment she'd never known existed, this sense of belonging, of being exactly where she was meant to be. Luna Maya, 8-year-old Lucy Martinez, came running up, her dark braids flying behind her. "Can you help me with my reading lesson?" Maya smiled, kneeling down to the little girl's level. "Of course, sweetheart. Did you bring your book?" Lucy nodded eagerly, pulling a well-worn copy of Charlotte's Web from her backpack. The makeshift school Maya had started was already bearing fruit. 12 children now attended regular classes in the converted community center, and their parents were beginning to join evening literacy sessions. "I can read the easy words," Lucy said, settling beside Maya on the wooden steps. "But some of them are still too hard." "That's what practice is for," Maya assured her, opening the book to where they'd left off yesterday. "Remember, if you don't know a word, break it down into smaller pieces." As Lucy began to read aloud, stumbling over some words but gaining confidence with each sentence, Maya felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. This was what she'd always dreamed of, making a real difference, helping children discover the magic of learning. "You're a natural teacher." Maya looked up to find Kieran approaching, his shirt sleeves rolled up and dirt on his hands from whatever project he'd been working on. Even after 3 months of marriage, the sight of him still made her heart skip. The bonding ceremony had been beautiful, a traditional werewolf ritual under the full moon, with his entire pack present to witness their union. But more than that, it had been the moment when Maya truly felt she'd found her home. "Lucy's doing all the hard work," Maya said, ruffling the little girl's hair. "She's going to be reading chapter books before we know it." Lucy beamed at the praise, then looked between Maya and Kieran with the shameless curiosity of childhood. "Are you two going to have babies soon? Mama says that's what married people do." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks while Kieran coughed, clearly trying not to laugh. "That's something adults decide when they're ready," Maya managed diplomatically. "But you'd make really good parents," Lucy insisted. "You're both nice, and Alpha Kieran is super strong. And you're the smartest person I know." "Thank you, Lucy," Kieran said, his voice warm with affection. "Why don't you finish your reading with Luna Maya? I need to borrow her for a few minutes." Lucy nodded and returned to her book, her finger following each word as she sounded them out. Maya watched her for a moment, then allowed Kieran to help her to her feet. "What's going on?" she asked as he led her away from the settlement center. "There's something I want to show you." Kieran's hand was warm in hers, his fingers intertwined with her own in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "It's a surprise." They walked through the forest, following a path Maya had never taken before. The pack settlement was built in a natural clearing, but Kieran was leading her deeper into the trees, toward the heart of Silver Moon territory. "How much farther?" Maya asked after they'd been walking for 20 minutes. "Almost there." Kieran squeezed her hand, his excitement barely contained. "I've been working on this for weeks. I wanted it to be perfect before I showed you." When they finally emerged from the tree line, Maya gasped. Before them stood a beautiful log cabin. larger than the one they'd been living in but built in the same rustic style. Wide windows let in plenty of natural light, and a wraparound porch offered views of the surrounding forest. But what caught Maya's attention were the smaller buildings scattered around the main structure, clearly designed for specific purposes. "Kieran," she breathed. "What is this place?" "Our new home," he said, pride evident in his voice. "But more than that, it's your school." Maya turned to stare at him, not quite believing what she was hearing. "My school?" Kieran nodded toward one of the smaller buildings. Classroom space for 20 children, with room to expand. A library in the main house, dedicated study areas, even living quarters for visiting teachers if we can convince any to come this far into werewolf territory. Maya felt tears prick her eyes as she realized what he'd done. "You built me a school." "I built us a future," Kieran corrected gently. "One where you can pursue your dreams without compromise. Where children from all over the region can come to learn, werewolf and human alike." Maya threw her arms around his neck, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his gesture. Not just the physical labor involved, but the thought behind it. He'd listened to her dreams and found a way to make them reality. "I love you," she whispered against his ear. "More than I thought it was possible to love anyone." "Even when I'm a giant monster wolf once a month?" Kieran asked, his tone light, but Maya caught the underlying concern that still lingered. Maya pulled back to look at him seriously. "Especially then. Do you know what Lucy asked me yesterday?" Kieran shook his head. "She asked why you disappear every full moon. When I tried to explain about needing privacy, she said, 'But doesn't Luna Maya get lonely?'" Maya smiled softly. "She can't understand why anyone would want to be alone during difficult times." "Maya?" "Children see things simply," Maya continued. "They don't understand why love should come with conditions. And maybe they're right. Maybe the reason the curse is getting weaker is because I refuse to let you face it alone." It was true. Over the past 3 months, the transformations had become less violent, more controlled. Kieran still changed with the full moon, but the beast that emerged was less savage, more aware. It no longer destroyed everything in its path. And twice, Maya had actually been able to remain nearby without triggering its hunting instincts. "The pack elders think you're the key to breaking the curse completely," Kieran said quietly. "They say true love accepted freely is the most powerful magic there is. What do you think?" Kieran cupped her face in his hands, his gray eyes serious. "I think I don't care if the curse never breaks completely. What we have now, this life, this love, this future we're building together, it's more than I ever dared hope for." Maya stood on her toes to kiss him, pouring all her love and promise into the contact. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "Come on," Maya said, taking his hand. "Show me everything. Show me our future." As Kieran led her through their new home, explaining his plans for each room, Maya felt a deep peace settle over her. She thought about the frightened woman who'd crashed her car in a storm 3 months ago, who'd believed she was being sent to her doom. That woman could never have imagined the happiness that waited for her in the arms of a cursed alpha. Sometimes the greatest blessings came disguised as punishments. Sometimes love found you in the darkest places. And sometimes, Maya thought as she watched her husband's face light up while describing their future together, the monsters turned out to be the heroes all along. Chapter 12. Full Circle. 6 months after moving into their new home, Maya woke to the familiar sensation of Kieran's restless energy filling the bedroom. The full moon was rising tonight, their 8th together as a bonded pair, and the pre-transformation anxiety that had once consumed him was notably absent. Instead, there was something different in the air, an anticipation that felt almost hopeful. "How are you feeling?" Maya asked softly, rolling over to find Kieran sitting on the edge of the bed, staring out the window at the afternoon sky. Strange, he admitted, turning to look at her with eyes that held wonder rather than dread. Not the usual restlessness. It's more like anticipation, as if something's about to change. Maya sat up, immediately alert. Over the months, she'd learned to read the subtle signs that preceded each transformation. This felt different, charged with a significance she couldn't quite name. "The pack elders want to speak with us," Kieran continued, his hand finding hers. "Before tonight. They say there are things we need to know about the curse. About what's been happening during the transformations." Maya's heart began to race. What kind of things? Elder Soren wouldn't say over the radio, but Maya? Kieran's grip on her hand tightened. He sounded excited. In 40 years of serving this pack, I've never heard him sound excited about anything related to the curse. An hour later, they stood in the council chamber of the pack settlement, facing the 3 elderly werewolves who served as keepers of Silvermoon's history and traditions. Elder Soren, a man whose white hair and deeply lined face spoke of decades of wisdom, stepped forward with something Maya had never seen before, a genuine smile. "Luna Maya, Alpha Kieran," he began formally, then his composure cracked slightly. "My friends, we have much to discuss." Elder Moira, a sharp-eyed woman who rarely spoke unless she had something crucial to say, moved to an ancient wooden chest in the corner of the room. "The curse that has plagued the Thorn bloodline," she said, carefully lifting out a leather-bound tome, "was not just a punishment. It was also a test." Maya felt Kieran go rigid beside her. "A test?" "The witch who cursed your great-grandfather was not evil, as the stories suggest," Elder Thomas explained, his weathered hands gesturing to ancient symbols carved into the chamber walls. "She was a guardian, tasked with ensuring that those who sought power were worthy of wielding it." Elder Soren opened the tome, revealing pages covered in flowing script and detailed illustrations. "Your great-grandfather demanded dominance, control through fear. The witch gave him power, yes, but at a price. He and his bloodline would be bound to their wolf nature until one of his descendants learned to rule through love rather than fear." Maya's breath caught. Love rather than fear. "The transformations were never meant to be permanent," Elder Moira continued. "They were meant to teach humility, to strip away the ability to hide behind human pretense. Each alpha had to face their true nature, both its darkness and its potential for protection." Kieran's voice was hoarse when he spoke. "Are you saying, all this time, there was a way to break the curse?" "Not a way, son," Elder Soren said gently. "A person. The curse could only be broken by an alpha who found someone willing to love them completely, not despite the curse, but including it. Someone who saw the beast and chose to stay anyway." Maya felt tears beginning to flow as the pieces clicked into place. That's why the transformations have been changing, why Kieran's been more in control each month. "The bond you two share," Elder Thomas said, his ancient eyes bright with joy. "It's been healing not just this generation's curse, but 3 generations of accumulated pain and isolation. Each month that you've chosen to love him, beast and man alike, has weakened the magic that bound him." "But tonight," Elder Moira said, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy, "tonight is the spring equinox. The same time of year the original curse was cast. If our readings are correct, if the love you share is truly as pure as we believe, the curse will break completely," Elder Soren finished. "Tonight's transformation will be Kieran's last involuntary change. After this, he'll have complete control over when and how he shifts." Maya felt the world tilt around her. "Are you certain?" "Nothing in magic is ever certain," Elder Moira admitted, but the signs are unmistakable. The pack bonds have been strengthening. The territory's wildlife has been returning to areas they'd avoided for decades. Even the other regional packs have noticed. They speak of Silvermoon with respect rather than fear now. Kieran was silent for a long moment, processing everything they'd learned. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "What do I need to do?" "What you've been doing," Elder Soren said simply. "Trust in love. Trust in your mate. And when the transformation comes tonight, don't fight it. Let it happen with joy rather than resistance." As the sun began to set, Maya and Kieran returned to their cabin hand in hand. The usual pre-transformation preparations felt different now. Instead of securing locks and chains, Kieran simply ensured they had privacy. Instead of Maya retreating to safety, she helped him move furniture to create an open space where the transformation could occur naturally. "Are you afraid?" Kieran asked as they stood together in their living room, moonlight beginning to stream through the windows. Maya considered the question seriously. "No," she said finally. "I'm excited. For the first time in your life, you get to experience this change as a celebration rather than a curse." Kieran pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. "I love you, Maya Thorne. Whatever happens tonight, that will never change." "I love you too," Maya whispered against his lips. "All of you. Always." The first wave of transformation hit as the moon reached its peak, but this time Kieran didn't fight it. Instead, he breathed through the change, his body shifting and expanding with a grace Maya had never witnessed before. The pain that usually accompanied the process was replaced by something that looked almost like euphoria. When the transformation was complete, the creature that stood before Maya was magnificent. Still the massive black wolf she'd come to know, but this time its eyes held complete awareness, complete recognition. This wasn't a beast driven by instinct. This was Kieran, fully himself in both forms. The wolf padded toward her slowly, its movements careful and deliberate. When it reached her, it lowered its great head and nuzzled against her hand with devastating gentleness. "Hello, my love," Maya whispered, running her fingers through its dark fur. "Welcome home." The wolf's response was a low, rumbling sound that was unmistakably contentment. For the first time in over a century, the Thorn bloodline was free. As dawn broke over Silvermoon territory, Maya woke to find Kieran's human form wrapped around her, his breathing deep and peaceful. When he opened his eyes, they were bright with wonder and joy. "I remember everything," he said softly. "Every moment of last night, every touch, every word you spoke. Maya, the curse is broken." Maya smiled, her heart so full of love she thought it might burst. "I know. I could see you, the real you, in the wolf's eyes." "So what happens now?" Kieran asked, propping himself up on one elbow to look down at her. Maya considered the question, thinking about their school, their pack, their future together. "Now we live," she said simply. "We love. We build something beautiful together. And we show the world that sometimes the greatest magic is choosing to see the light in someone else's darkness." Kieran's smile was radiant as he leaned down to kiss her. "I like that plan, Luna Thorne. I like it very much." Outside their window, the sounds of their pack beginning their day drifted through the forest. Children laughing, adults calling greetings to one another. The bustle of a community that had found peace under the leadership of an alpha who ruled with love rather than fear. Maya had thought she was being punished when her father sent her away. Instead, she'd found her destiny in the arms of a man who'd taught her that love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing each other, again and again, through every transformation life could bring. Some stories, she reflected as Kieran's lips found hers, really did have fairy tale endings. You just had to be brave enough to love the beast first.